Central Otago is a really special place. We're a long way south, one of the southernmost regions in the world, and so on paper it shouldn't really work, but somehow it does. The reason it works is a unique combination of things. So we have great protection from the big mountains all around us, and so it creates like a small bubble of climate that where you can successfully grow grapes. But if you move outside of that small area, the region has just gone over 2,000 hectares only, then it's either too wet or too cold. The next big wine region is a full 6 hours north of here. So the mountains look after us. They also stop the rain. So very low disease pressure here. It's a very dry climate, low vigour, which is great for making premium wine. Very low disease pressure, which is awesome. Very easy to have an organic spray regime here, and even then you're not spraying very much, which is great. The mountains also mean that we have very cool nights here. So you have warm, dry days and cool nights. So you ripen the fruit, but you don't cook it. I think a signature of the region is that you have always great freshness in the whites and in the Pinot Noir.
Excellent. And how much rain do you get per year here? Because you do have to irrigate, so...
Yeah, well, less and less as the vines get older, but it is technically a semi-arid climate. We get on this vineyard between 300 and 350 millimetres a year, and oftentimes not a lot of that in summer. So to establish a vineyard here without irrigation would be extremely challenging, and I think on this side it just wouldn't have happened. But what we're finding over time is each year we're using less and less irrigation. Eventually, in the next 5 years, this vineyard will be dry farmed. But if you fly, as the crow flies 120 kilometres to the west, you're in one of the wettest places on earth. Milford Sound can get up to 9 metres of rain a year. So that shows you the effect of those big mountains between the west coast and where we're standing.
Excellent. And you've got 3 different vineyard sites within Central Otago. Can you tell us a little bit about the variation we'll find within the wine region, the different soil types, and why you choose certain vineyards for your production?
Sure. So we're quite small, and we just produce from 3 vineyards that we farm. But broadly, the region has 6 subregions. So you've got 3. You've got a central valley where we are, which has sort of 3 sides to it with vineyards. Bannockburn at the south, which was the first area planted in this valley. Pisa on the western side, and Bendigo where we are on the eastern side on a sort of north-facing range of hills. Then outside of that valley, which has sort of 3/4 of the region's vineyards, you've got 3 outlying subregions. Gibbston Valley, which is close to Queenstown. That's a little bit higher elevation, a little further west, so a little higher rainfall and a little cooler. Wanaka, which is sort of to the northwest, again a little higher, a little cooler. And Alexandra to the south, so it's the southernmost subregion, very low elevation actually, very dry, but with cool autumns and cool springs.
Excellent. And tell me about your different sites that you work with Pinot, because you've got this vineyard, which is your home vineyard, yep. And then you've also got your more schist-based vineyard.
Yeah. Can
you tell us about the differences and how that's reflected in the glass?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun range of vineyards because they are really different, the 3 sites. The home vineyard where we are, this terrace was carved out by a glacier a long time ago, and so the schist rock parent material has been weathered down to its finest particles, so it's become clay and released all the calcium in the process. So you've ended up with a chalk and clay soil. There's a lens of chalk about 1 foot thick that, depending on the vineyard, where you are in the vineyard, is between 1/2 metre and 1 metre down in the soil profile with more clay underneath. So that's pretty interesting. That only happens on old soil structures. 2 kilometres from us is our Rocky Point vineyard. That's extremely steep and is basically straight schist rock. So very low vigour, very, very stony, very low yields there. but the soil's never been farmed by either site before, so that primary mineral content of the soil is still there, very high mineral content in the soil. So although the vines aren't vigorous, they're not deficient in minerals, which is cool. And then Copperwide Delta, which is on the valley floor, is a combination of sort of alluvial soils from the river and the passage of glaciers over the top. So you've got a more loose, free draining soil with a lot of stones. So more like the alluvial soils that you'll see in Martinborough, maybe, in the Martinborough terraces. Yeah.
Excellent. So lots of variety here.
Yeah, and then I guess in terms of the wines, they are all distinctly different sites. So we treat them the same in the winery and in the vineyard in terms of farming. The Rocky Point vineyard that's on schist rock always makes these really bright, vibrantly aromatic Pinot Noirs, despite the soil looking so sort of hard and mean. But held together from, and they're not sort of big, luscious fruit bombs. There's a sort of tension to the wines from that site on the palate, which is fun. And the home vineyard on the clay and chalk has maybe a bit more structure, texture to the palate, and it's a site that takes a lot longer to sort of unwind. So it needs longer in barrel to sort of integrate, and longer in bottle to start showing its true colours. And this vineyard sort of sits on the line between sort of red and black fruits, so it depends on the vintage which way it goes, which is really interesting. And down in Copperwide Delta, which is the more sort of free draining, more stony, loose soil, that also makes really elegant Pinot. It's very perfumed, but very supple tannins. Very, very sort of seamless.
Nice. And why do you think Central Otago has become so renowned for its Pinot Noir? It's the majority of the vineyards here are dedicated to Pinot. What is the affinity with the grape? Why does it really work here?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I mean, focus would be one of them. I mean, it's the planted red grape, really. There's a few other red varietals, but only in sort of single digit hectares. So there's a focus on the grape for a start, and it's a grape that does well in our climate. Pinot's famously fussy, so too hot it loses its definition and sort of stops being clearly Pinot. Too cold, it's aggressively vegetal and unripe. And we sort of sit in the window where we get Pinot Noir ripe successfully, even in our cool vintages, which we get down here. But because of our climate, we have cool nights here, we retain freshness. I think that's a real signature of the region, and I think it's one of the reasons why the wines have done so well.
Excellent. And you're experienced in making wine in France as well. Can you draw some comparisons between Pinot in Burgundy and Pinot here in Central Otago? What would you say kind of, for a consumer drinking Pinot, what are they going to feel the difference? Or do you think that's far too wide a question?
It's a tricky one. I don't think no one in Central Otago is setting out to make Burgundy, and if you did, you're not going to succeed, because Pinot is so specific to where it is, and you're never going to have the exact same conditions as you are in Burgundy. So I think that's sort of out of the equation. But I think when you're comparing the wines, I mean, both are proper cool climates, so you've got acid structure in Burgundy and in Central Otago, so that's probably a common point. What you can find, I think, in Central Otago is the wines are sort of more vibrantly fruity and perhaps with stronger varietal character. We have a lot of sunshine, a lot of UV down here as well, and we seem to perhaps have a sort of a much sort of brighter fruit-driven expression perhaps of Pinot. It does taste like New World, but I guess in terms of the profile of the wines, it sits properly in cool climate.
Excellent. And then especially here at Prophet's Rock, you're very driven with Alsace varieties. Can you tell us a bit about the most important white varieties for you, and again, what makes them special from this region?
Sure. Well, in our case, currently we have Riesling and Pinot Gris. I think Riesling is one of the shining stars of Central Otago. again, we successfully get it ripe, so that's great. Later ripening white varieties aren't going to thrive here. And you get wonderful acid structure in the Rieslings, but you get really ripe aromatic flavours. So, and they age extremely well. Old Rieslings from Central Otago is definitely something worth trying to find. With Pinot Gris, we're really lucky down here because we can ripen Pinot Gris into that aromatic spectrum of flavour, but we retain acidity, which can be a difficulty with Pinot Gris in warmer climates. So we retain freshness despite making a very sort of aromatic styled Pinot Gris, in a New Zealand or New World context. Then off my own bat, we're also planting Gewürz and Muscat. I guess I'm still trying to shed the the homesickness for Alsace, but we're not going to make too much. So that basically, between our own staff, we can probably drink most of it.
Super. And then my last question is really kind of reflective on your time here working in the region. You've been here for 13 years now?
Yeah.
And how much have you seen it change in that time in terms of the profile of Pinot from the region? You're known for your kind of light and delicate touch with Pinot. Have you seen that as a general trend in the region as well, and where do you hope it will continue to go in the future?
Sure. I mean, I think we have seen, in my time in Central Otago, the region sort of move as the vines have got older and the winemakers have become more experienced with their sites. You've seen a sort of a movement in style, a sort of growing up, I guess, of the region where the profile of the wines has moved towards elegance, refinement, and away from sort of bigger structured, perhaps later picked styles that helped put the region on the map early on probably, but are also a function of what young vines want to do. So I think there has definitely been a movement in that direction.
Super. And how do you see it in the future? What do you expect will be happening in the next 10 years here?
I think, like with any young Pinot region, people continuing to explore new sites, getting to know their own vineyards even better, and just really dialing in how they handle the sites that they work with. I know, speaking for myself, I'm certainly not making the wines now the same way I did when I turned up here 13 years ago. You learn from your vineyard, it teaches you a few harsh lessons sometimes as well, and you adjust your approach in line with what works on your site. And the region's so diverse that what people change and what people do on each site is going to be really different.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.